Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you join us here. Today, we'll be talking about those of you that are involved here today are considering migration and what to do to support your business into the future. And we're going to be sharing in the next for the next hour, a little while here. We'll be talking about processes and things we can do to help you. And so put some information in front of you. I'm Joe Velez. I'm from Ultra Consulting. I'm the managing director of the firm. A little bit on my background. I'm basically a functional person. I grew up in the metals business, packaging business, food and bev, a number of different experiences before I joined consulting here over the last 6 years. And I certainly have a high passion for process improvement and process and business transformation. And Ultra, in fact, when we think about Ultra, Ultra is a transformation company. Topics we'll be covering, we'll do a quick intro on Ultra, kind of a flyby on our methodology and talk about your transformation journey. I do want to advise that if you have questions, don't feel free to ask questions as needed. But anyway, after the introduction, we're going to use a client benchmark to talk a little bit about typical pain points that we see clients, and this particular client was facing, and how moving forward on their migration helped address those pain points. And then I'll share some affirmations from that client. Then we'll talk about the migration decision itself and typical challenges that we see and some key themes. From there, we'll just touch on, we're not going to spend a lot of time on best practices, but we'll touch on some BI related and maybe supply chain related practices, just to start to position that as you think about migration, thinking about what you can do with our business, what your business can become, and then we'll close. And although it says Q&A as part of the closing, again, please ask questions as we move forward. A little bit about Ultra. We are a kind of a data or digital transformation company. We work with legacy customers to help them basically achieve their business strategy and their business objectives. As you can see here on the slide, it's a little busy. We primarily function in the manufacturing and distribution sector, and we've been around 27 years, do many clients, 400 clients, and do 500-600 projects through our life cycle so far. And individual resources in Ultra have quite a bit more experience than what just we've been doing at Ultra. Key things to emphasize: vendor independent. We are we are vendor independent. We don't propose software for any one firm. What we do is we drive a transformation process, and that includes a selection process, which is agnostic to the software package. It's all about looking at your processes, looking at your process gaps, your process pain points, how can technology enable them, and then with an eye always on what your overall strategy is, so we can make certain that we're enabling that. We keep relationships with tight relationships, or we think of them as alliances, with 30 vendors, and of course with 50 vendors. And we actually have wound up selecting and deploying and managing projects with a little bit more than 30 vendors. Our key sort of strategy is that if you have the right processes, the right technology, and the right people position, that those come together and drive business results. That's how we look at ourselves internally. That's also how we look at how we can help you transform. A little bit of history here. I'll kind of skip past this. We started in 1994 and have continued to progress, and you can see our growth. One of the things we're most proudest of is beginning in 2016. We were selected as certified as one of the great places to work, which was an honor for us and continues to be something that we're very proud of. So 28 years, I said 27 years, 28 years we've been at it. This is an example of the vendors that we have a lot of experience with. This is by no means the full slate of possible vendors, but certainly it's kind of a snapshot of ones that we work with pretty routinely or have worked with in the last few years. A little bit about Ultra's when you think about your transformation, and I've already mentioned a couple of times your journey down that transformation. From an Ultra standpoint, what we'll tell you is, we work in terms of the depth of your transformation, not just putting out an objective, but also decomposing, delayering that, and making certain that the people side is ready, your data is ready, your processes are ready, the technology is right. So it's really a broader way of doing transformation, but by using enablement from all fronts. And we believe that there are different paths to transformation, but there's really the best path that we recommend is that business process improvement is the first step, so that you understand what your future state processes require. Technology path, basically, that's an enable, but it's not the primary driver. There could be burning platform issues that you have where technology is solving a key business problem, and that certainly is the case. And so technology is a key component of the transformation process, but we always recommend starting with business process improvement. And then all paths really require people to be organized properly. That includes the governance, executive level, and aligned for improvement, so that there's enough priority in the business to drive the gains that are necessary to pay for the investments that are being made. And all paths, no matter which path you take, you always require the right culture to support change. Resistance to change will kill a transformation project, an improvement project. And so making certain that those changes are needed, that are needed for the business, are properly supported, and the culture needs to be able to do that. And we focus on all paths. And we do that by following our methodology. This is a kind of a flyby of our methodology. You see that there's 4 major components. The business process improvement component. In that component, we essentially analyze your business. We organize your teams along flow lines, and so that the voice of the customer can be better heard, and making certain that there's more horizontal thinking that way as well. We then take that and do a current state deep dive. And we have a unique set of processes in our methodology where we break down and decompose your processes and your process flows, not only your process steps, but also the system that processes are done in, and any people-related aspects of your flow, where decision points are occurring and that sort of thing. And we do that so we can better see what the waste is and what the opportunities are. And all along, as we're analyzing your current state, we're capturing those opportunities in what we call an opportunity matrix, which your team that's collaborating with us through this process is managing and prioritizing. So at the same time we're doing this work, we're building essentially a continuous improvement slate of priorities, and then we help you actually deploy against those. Once we understand your problems and your issues and understand your opportunities and your leverage points, your secret sauce, if you will, we then work with your teams to educate them around what's possible in terms of what leading practices are, what competitors are doing, what leading practices are in ERP implementations or technology implementations. And then we collaborate them. Once we go through that education cycle, we collaborate with them to develop the future state. So we essentially, the process maps and process flows and analysis that we did during current state, we reconstruct them with the major issues resolved so that we can see what the business is going to be like in the future state. As we're coming out of future state, we then go into a value analysis of your opportunities and develop a business case for change, which you can use to actually justify the investment in technology. So that's a flyby on the business process improvement phase. From a technology standpoint, we then use the outcomes of the business process improvement phase to develop a script, a day in the life. We turn the future state into words, essentially. And we use our background and our relationships with vendors to down select from all the vendors that are out there that could maybe have a shot at your requirements to the few that we should be investing effort on. So we qualify vendors. When we do that, we then go through a selection process where we get down to 3 vendors that are the ones that really have the best shot. And for those 3 vendors, we do a very detailed demo where we ask them to present their software in the form of executing the day in the life script that we've developed. At the same time, your teams are involved, learning how to score and how to evaluate what they're seeing. So we teach them our methodology for doing that, so that when we get to a point of choosing, of selection, that it is a joint decision that the business has made. Again, we're agnostic, so we're not selling any one or another, and it's important that the business people are owning the solution. Finally, from there, we go into due diligence, where we get into the negotiation process and make certain we're getting the best price. We have 20 different negotiation points that we drive. Our notion there is to get to the best possible deal. And then finally, we lead and co-lead, work with you on confirming and closing the solution. The next 2 are implementation and value realization. I will just tell you that we have a framework for implementing, helping you implement the solutions as well, whether that's an upgrade, an upgrade with additional functionalities or add-ons, or a brand new system that was selected during BPI and technology selection. And then once that solution goes live, it's important to make good on the original opportunity and value analysis that was done during BPI. So in value realization, what we're doing is looking back at that, making certain that opportunities that are produced, that were identified during BPI and roadmapped, are being captured, and then deploying activities with you to make certain that you're delivering on that functionality or those benefits. And the key thing is that we do offer what we call kind of a starter assessment for firms that are attending today, and firms that need it to help you prepare for a migration process. It's kind of a 4-week sprint project where we come in and work with you to help you prepare for it, and then come to the end of it with a basic decision point around whether to proceed or not with the migration. That's a specific service aimed at the migration efforts. So some key questions for your business that are in play. I'll just go from across the top here. Will you progress to your business vision using your current people, processes, and supporting technologies? Now, this slide is here because, our experience with clients, and we'll show you a specific client example in a moment, is that getting started and assessing the risks of not starting is just as important as having risks that or concerns that you have keeping you from starting. So ask some generic questions here, like, will you progress to your vision using your current people, processes, and supporting technologies? And will you progress at the velocity that you feel you need? Will you progress to your vision with a new potential future state? So if you have your future state defined, will that future state and the way you're deploying it and how you're acting in the future attract the best talent and help you to retain the best talent and help you to make certain that key learnings and key things that are baked in with your legacy users are captured in your future processes? And then the lower left here, you see some bullets around competitive positioning. The key there is, where do you stand in the marketplace, and what are your competitors doing, and can you afford not to transform? And everyone that entertains the question around whether to proceed with a migration or not, has a position in the marketplace, whether you're the low-cost supplier, whether you're the innovator, the one that's introducing new products all the time, whether you're a combination of those two, whether you're the high-cost person, but you're unique and you have services and products that nobody else can do. And any one of those models, improving your future state processes and drilling on the secret sauce and baking it in for the future is still going to be beneficial. And in fact, is the primary benefit that you can have from doing a transformation. So let's dive into a little bit with this reference client that we're using. It's Chicago Tube and Iron, based in the Chicago area. It's a Chicago suburb, and they're basically a fairly centralized company in terms of their key back office functions, but they have 13 different locations throughout the the sort of the Midwest and Upper Midwest and the Carolinas as well, along with a plant in Mexico. And they were 80% distribution, 20% fab, and they were looking to grow their fab side, but their platform was not allowing them, was not enabler to that. They had poor integrations, poor handoffs. They were mimicking operations intelligence or BI type things using one-off tools, but information was not available in a timely way. Ultimately, if you look at their objectives, they wanted to also replace the unsupported platform that they were living on. They wanted to have an integrated system that had supply chain end-to-end integrated with order management, with transportation, with inventory management, the entire end-to-end business, all in one common single source of truth platform. They had a landscape because of trying to achieve their business goals with their legacy systems. They had a landscape that had evolved to 22 different integrations. So that's, I've seen bigger, I've seen less, but that was something that was an issue for them, because they're being able to maintain those and making certain the data integrity was right was becoming a challenge. And they had growth that they wanted to drive. They wanted to increase their fabricating footprint as a means of growth. So the distribution and fabricating piece, they had made investments on their fab side, and they were looking to leverage those investments. They also had some targets around inventory control, and basically they were looking to prevent the business, to protect the business. They had heard about some other competing companies, and even a company that acquired them, a little over 10 years ago, had some experiences with an ERP implementation that didn't go well. So in terms of Ultra's Chicago Tube's journey and how Ultra helped them with that, there were really three big buckets, and we choose this case here to share with you because they're the typical three that we see our clients deal with, whether it's data to be able to make good decisions, and within data, it's hard to be data driven if data is not available on a timely basis, or it requires manual manipulation. In order to gain operational insights or operations intelligence, a lot of manual data manipulation is needed. You wind up spending more time finding the problems than you do preventing them, and that's never a good place to be. Another sort of pain point, the impact of the older system. They had an aging workforce, and I know that many people and many businesses are dealing with that. Maybe many of you are dealing with that. Ultimately, all these tribal knowledge that is baked into that aging workforce, and that aging workforce is leaving. You have your experts leaving, which means that secret sauce and that knowledge is leaving as well. So that's an issue with older systems. Unsupported platform, obviously, it was a thing with this particular client. And also, where they were at, bringing in new hires and new people as they were looking to improve and reorganize and look for ways to become a better supplier, it was difficult to onboard people because the systems were complex. There were so many, 22 integrations and then legacy systems, just difficult to onboard folks. And then difficult to react to changing marketplace needs. A number of things in their marketplace were coming up that they couldn't participate in because they didn't have the technology. As far as investing in the future, they understood that going forward that their old technology was only going to give them incremental value, and they were looking to take a value step function away from that situation by going to that new system. It's something to consider. And again, I mentioned already about difficulty of onboarding. That also speaks to people. Long learning curves. When you made a job change, they had long learning curves. Things weren't documented properly, that type of thing. So those are three big pain points they were dealing with, and we find that it's typical of most companies that are on this decision bubble of whether to migrate or not. When you think about today and going in the future, what Chicago Tube is kind of positioned for after their transformation, they really now are driving decision making from a single source of truth. They're using dashboards that are updated real time, and they also provide drill down capabilities. So it's more than just, when you see data on a PowerPoint, on dashboards or on your screens when you log in, when you see data, you can click and eventually get down to the individual order or the work order or the individual shipment, whatever the specific thing you're looking for. And that's a key enabler to really get a deeper understanding of waste in their processes. And then the management focus can then go to more exception management, rather than we're meeting today to figure out our problems, and then the meeting ends before you figure out how to prevent them. Instead, trying to meet around exceptions, because you have the data to know that you're in control at all times and you're really reacting to exceptions. As far as the impact that it's had on their new processes, they came out with documented work instructions, which are helping to drive consistency, something that's difficult to do when you're in legacy systems. You can have SOPs and so forth. What we did and do during implementations and during migration processes is have those work instructions and have those job aids. We think consistency is really critical. Tribal knowledge then became baked into their new process designs. So the key action there is that those experts that have that tribal knowledge need to be positioned in the migration process, so that they're subject matter experts, properly managed. They need to be involved so that their thinking and their knowledge is baked into the future state processes. So now they have new technology supporting their future state needs, and they're able to capture be opportunistic and capture additional business. And we'll talk about that in a minute. As far as investing in the future, they feel like they're positioned to leverage leading practices going forward. They're keeping up with new practices. They're attending Epicor's annual conference. They're sending some of their key process people so that they can see what's being done by others. So it just builds a momentum of improvement and of understanding and improving the business. The job satisfaction of those that are involved, when folks, especially new hires and middle management and folks that are younger, being in a system that it's easy to use, it's state of the art, it just adds job satisfaction. And of course, as I said earlier, as far as investing in the future, the book is pretty open in terms of their growth potential. Obviously, you're always limited unless you grow by acquisition if you do organic growth. But today, where they're positioned, the system is not, and the processes are not disempowering them for that growth. I'm sharing some affirmations that came from the vice president of IT at Chicago Tube and also from the CEO. And I'm going to read them to you because I think that they summarize better than I can some of the key benefits. The business process improvement phase was wide-ranging and detailed. It got them thinking the right way. They were thinking incrementally, and they couldn't see what the landscape of improvement truly was. They learned what they needed to learn, which is, I know, a different thing to think about, but they didn't know what they didn't know. So as they grew and they started to open their eyes during that process assessment phase, they began to target something that's future state, totally different than what they could have envisioned. So it helped them approach the project properly and made the selection process easier. They were able to add market share organically. They didn't do it by acquiring. It doesn't mean that they're not trying to acquire folks, but they had an opportunity to add additional share, in which allowed them to do that because the ERP system, their new system, did not impair them from that. And in fact, they had 25% year-over-year growth in the year right after the deployment. And all of this while continuing solid cost management that they felt they needed. It was a critical enabler for them. With cost management, it doesn't necessarily allow you to grow the business necessarily, but you can hurt the business pretty significantly if you don't have solid cost management. They had gone through extensive pain to have that, and they retained it. The CEO, he said his quote is, "It's important to find an independent resource that can help you choose and implement the right solution." And they interviewed a number of consulting firms and found that Ultra have the expertise to help them. And I will tell you, whether you're doing a new implementation or just doing a migration, ultimately, a metaphor that Don McNeely, the CEO, used to say is, look, everybody that fought Mike Tyson had a plan until the first punch landed. Then they lost what to do. When you're doing migrations, they may sound, and the plan may sound like it's perfect, and this is going to be a slam dunk, but you really need to have somebody that's done it before, that's partnering with you to help you champion it, because you're going to run into unforeseen things. It's a nonlinear type of a project, and reacting to things correctly is what gets you the benefits. Reacting them incorrectly is where you start to lose. Projects extend, spend extends, and you don't capture all the business advantages. So some challenges, to the migration decision that we see. This is across not just CTI, but across clients that we see that are thinking about a migration decision. The failure to define a business case for change brings into question the debate around affordability, and there's usually fear of losing secret sauce. Gee whiz, we are we're the new product people, or we are, the way we price is what sets us apart. And fear of losing that is something that sometimes gets in the way. Seeing it as a cost to be minimized rather than a value to be maximized. That's kind of an approach, but still related to business case and the importance of having one. The benefit of the upgrade technology, I think that businesses that are looking to upgrade and to upgrade their systems and do a migration understand that they're going to get upgraded technology, but how they're going to get it and the way they're going to get it can be unclear. Certainly a lower cost from a new technology stack should be expected, but what about being able to leverage things like Internet of Things to drive optimized manufacturing or distribution excellence? The impact to the people I talked about earlier, and the possibility for process improvement and supply chain integration, both at the time of migration, but the positioning you get afterward. So when you think about road mapping, here's what we'll do, and here's what we'll get after the migration, but now we'll be positioned for a number of new improvements, some of which we foresee, some of which we may not foresee. Another challenge that people tend to consider is that the organization risks are too high. There's a reason for not doing it, because my people will never, be able to wrap their head around it, or we're too busy, or we're too thin. We don't have the people. We here at Ultra, we've heard all those reasons, and there's ways through this decision and this phase, and in fact, this preparation phase that I mentioned earlier is one of the ways in which to clarify that, make sure the alignment is possible and properly positioned. Also, some folks are just not sure how to start, and what do I do for second and third, and it affects your whole entire end-to-end business. So making certain that the right alignment is there, the right governance is there, the right executive affirmation is there to do it, and the people are ready to do it. That's really key. So those are some things we see that folks are challenged with as they look to make their migration decision. So some key themes moving ahead. Just keep in mind that an excellent implementation or migration is not the same thing as digital transformation. If you're looking to transform your business, you're looking to make a step function improvement in operations, or in shipping, or in warehouse management, or in the order management piece, or maybe you're going to add on e-commerce, whatever it might be. If you're looking to transform, just doing an implementation or a migration really well does not get you that transformation. You need to have some awareness and understanding and definition of what future state you're trying to chase, so that you can make sure that when you're doing the migration, that you're designing and setting up processes to deliver the behavior you need. The other thing is speed to value is more than a talking point. That's really about over-engineering new solutions, or over-engineering your future state, and doing things that take so long to do that you wind up not getting the speed to value you really need. So key is how to get there safely, without hurting customers, without hurting suppliers, without hurting your internal folks, but still do it efficiently and quickly. And another key theme is I think you have to start right. As I said earlier, team alignment, team sponsorship, have a transformation tour guide or a migration tour guide so that you can plan and prepare for the projects well. All of that leads to velocity, alignment, business value, and people handouts that have integrity. What I mean by that is that if I'm in your company and I'm involved in this project, or I'm going to be the recipient of new processes that come from the project, that I understand what my role is. There's a commitment made to me to train me, to bring me up to speed. I see the documentation. I'm being listened to. Starting right includes making certain that the people adoption processes, the people readiness processes are correct. One thing I do want to underscore that for those that are attending this session, Epicor has extended their rebate program. And I wanted to make sure and mention that. I hadn't mentioned that sooner. A few words in the next couple of slides before we close. We'll talk a little bit about sort of leading practices or sample practices. The first one, because I mentioned data earlier, I wanted to talk about business intelligence and business intelligence maturity modeling. One of the key things at BI is, just kind of keep score and go to meetings and say, we've got the data, and then you show up to the meeting and my number for backlog is different than your number. It's different from their number. And everybody in the meeting has a different view of what the facts are. That is what we would call beginning BI, where you've got Excel, you're spreadsheet driven, you can't communicate well because you're crowd talking past each other. Oh, I did my extract based at beginning on Saturday, my data, and yours begins on Monday. So communication is difficult. And then when you start developing business intelligence tools, or even the notion of using new tools for extracting business and operations intelligence, you kind of start putting things in place. It's still manual. You start using analytics. You develop a structured reporting system that's repetitive. You say, look, we're coming together, but we're inconsistent still because we're still got disparate systems and different differences in what the data really is. But there's an agreement that we need to do better here. That's would be developing, starting to accelerate past beginning. That triangle that's shown there is not any one company that I would cite. It's just a typical company we assess. We kind of assess where they are and where they want to get to, and we have a tool set for doing that. Ultimately, you go from a more defined operations and business intelligence framework where you have standard processes that are repeatable. The access and information delivery is in line, if you will. So you've defined your vision of what you want BI to be more formally, and then you move to advance when you actually start executing that vision. One of the I think illustrations that helps sort of drive this home is this sort of graphic, essentially moving from reacting to proacting as a key voyage in analytics. And this view, similar to the prior view, is just showing the maturity on analytics, where you start in the lower left with ad hoc measures. You take what you're doing and you benchmark it against other people. You look at your systems and you say, gee whiz, how can I set up extracts and Excel spreadsheets and so forth to view it? And you continue to improve as you develop scorecards and drill down capabilities. The idea is to break through that wall and move to the upper right here and actually start becoming proactive, start being predictive and prescriptive and doing root cause analysis, that sort of thing. This applies to process improvement. It also applies to businesses, being able to get to the point where I can properly forecast my business and optimize my business because I understand my root drivers. That level of analytics understanding is really critical. So it's kind of an overlay to this kind of a view. And then the last thing I'll share before I quit here is here's a view of operations, of an operations side, supply chain maturity. And when you think in terms of your supply chain and you think in terms of moving forward with an implementation or migration or an upgrade, there's these dimensions that you need to be thinking about and what your level of maturity is now and what you want it to be. At Ultra, we have a process where for your key production in your key areas, your key production centers, we talk about where you are versus what different levels of maturity look like. We also do a lean assessment that does the same thing to gauge your readiness for lean. This happens to be a view that looks at how you set up the supply chain, if you've segmented the supply chain in terms of data, analytics, software, hardware, people, and process, and kind of working your way across. You can see that, if you find yourself here and can classify yourself, you can start to see where the areas are where you really need to be pinpointing for the benefits of your migration. Okay, so that the last thing I have here is a kind of a cartoon that when you talk about supply chain 4.0, what we're really saying is what you think in terms of your future state. There's so many different technologies out there, and there's so many things being done. I recently saw a demonstration of at a company that was actually doing their cycle counting using a drone that was going out into their warehouse. And the results are excellent, much more accurate. Obviously, the drone is cheaper. You don't have to pay overtime to a drone. That's just one simple example, but there's so many technologies that are flooding in these days, and understanding what you want to do, how you want to leverage that future for you and for your business, making certain you go, crawl, walk, run, right? Because your organizational ability to keep up with new things is limited. And so you want to pace out what you're going to do, but ultimately having a sense of what's possible and not really limiting your options. So with that, I will open it up to questions here.
Hey Joe, we got a few questions. So I sent them over to you, but let me go ahead and just ask them to you. So the first one was, how do we know that it's time to migrate? We hear from our rep that we need to move to the quote cloud, but we aren't seeing the urgency our companies on the web are to get a sense of this.
I mentioned this a little earlier. Knowing when is really about where you are in terms of your journey of excellence. Where are you in the marketplace? Can you afford to stay where you are? That could be a tipping point. Are you on the hook for some financial deliverables in the next 24 months that you can't deliver with your current processes? Do you have certain mission critical processes that are at risk because they're supported by a system that is no longer around and no longer being supported? That was the case with the case history I shared. So those are some key things that I would say. Those things all come together to tell you. The assessment process that I mentioned earlier that we can do also galvanizes that. That's not an assessment process on the way to a migration or to an upgrade. It's an assessment process to arrive at the decision point so that you can decide with data whether you should or shouldn't. So I just offer that as well. So those are some responses to that.
Great. Second one. Our company, a Midwest manufacturer, has the aging workforce that you're speaking of, and it's making us nervous to move away from the system we're on because of our personnel's reticence, great use of that word, to learn something new. How do you educate and build consensus for a migration throughout the entire organization?
This is such an excellent question because, we see for changes like migrations, new implementations, things like that, a lot of people worry about, well, can they do, our pricing is so complicated, can the system do that? It turns out that process and technology is the third on the list. People and data are at the top. And this question goes to exactly the people. We at Ultra, we subscribe strongly to the model where you developed a change management plan right at the very beginning that begins with a stakeholder analysis where you look at everybody where they are. That is not a statistical thing. It can be. You say, oh, so many people here, so many people there. No. Beyond that, you want to go into a series of interviews and actually try and understand which people are open to the change, which people are going to resist it. Look at the rotation that is needed. In other words, people that are leaving in key positions and people that are positioned to take their place. That's pre-work that has to happen. And getting the right communication, people fear what they don't know, right? It's the old axiom. So they have to really understand why it's important to the company. If they've been around for a while and they care about the company, they will start to come up to speed. But you can't afford to have passive resistors, folks that tell you, yeah, I'm in, and then they're not really in. Or folks that that show up and they actively resist. They show up, but then they don't do the tasks that are assigned to them. And that happens in other change processes, not just migrations and systems, but those are the ones we're trying to root out. We have a process called change impact action planning, where we go and seek to find those, and that's a contact sport. I tell people that this whole thing is not to be done in the sidelines in the locker room on the whiteboard. It's out on the field of play. It's a contact sport, and getting involved with the individual, the receiving team, the order management team, the customer service team, the production supervisors. Production supervisors are always left behind, and they have the most knowledge. And making certain that they understand what changes are coming and that we understand how those changes affect them, and then devise measures to help them cope with those changes. When you do the migration, one of the key things, just to finish out on that question, is a lot of people, if you hear the term super users, I call them first responders. You know, if you think about somebody getting hurt, you have a first responder, right? Okay. In migrations and implementations, you have first responders. Early on in the project, during this phase that I'm referring to about the OCM plan, you identify who those first responders are going to be. We call them subject matter experts and super users. I like to call them first responders, but identify who they are and get them involved in the process, because if I'm on the shipping dock and I have a problem, I'm not going to run to the executives. I'm going to run to my first responder. Well, that person needs to be knowledgeable around what's changed. If there are going to be new work instructions from the change, that person will help co-author them. And we help with that too. But that's a dynamic that you start to create that tells people, even the resistors, that, look, I should jump on board. This is going to work. I'm all in. This is happening. And they can contribute in ways that are positive. It becomes a two-way arrow that way. It isn't just them being told what to do. Read this, do that, call me if it doesn't work. They need to be pulled in as well. So that communication process is a two-way process. Those are a few of the salient points around things that need to be managed to get people on board.
Excellent. Okay. Who needs to be involved on our team in order to put together the migration plan with Ultra?
Well, with Ultra, you need to have a project manager that needs to be sponsored by the executive team. One of the things we do very early is an executive affirmation session to make sure that among, not only that we know, but the project manager, your project manager knows what the executive key priorities are, what they're concerned about, what they'd like to get out of it, what are the success factors, what do they hope to be different after the migration, so that your project manager is empowered and understands what they're expected to deliver. Once we have the project manager early on, we work with you to identify the team, and we're going to have functional leads in key areas. We analyze your business, trying to understand your process scope. So we'll map your processes. If you're multiple location, we'll do a process to location map to try to bring that forward. That helps set up the team. Once the team is set up properly, then we'll define the migration milestones. So there's a design element, there's a requirements gathering, there's a design element, there's key testing, validation, if you will. There's a number of steps in the migration process, and those are all laid out with the PM. We don't go away into a smoke-filled room and come out and say, look at this shiny object. It's more a collaborative joint thing so that we can run the thing together, keeping in mind that we're building the internal muscle to manage improvements and transformations beyond this migration. It isn't just like a big computer project. It's a business change project.
Excellent. More questions are coming in. So this one says, can we see a case study of a company in our field, electronics manufacturing?
You can. I would need to hand that over to you, Brian, so that we can.
Yeah, for sure. And I would just say on Ultra Consultants website, ultraconsultants.com, there are a plethora of case studies, and there are definitely some in electronics manufacturing. I am seeing your email address, so I will send you a couple links to case studies directly. Here's another question that came in. Do we work directly with Ultra on the migration planning, or do we reach out to Epicor?
If you engage us in this upfront migration planning assessment, you would work with Ultra. primarily, but Epicor would be a third party in the discussions, because there's a technology component, right? This is a technology world here at the same time that's pacing with the business side of this, and they are the ones that deal with that.
Excellent. Couple more questions. Our CEO is super concerned about the integrity of our current data. We are on Avante. And that's the end of the question. So I think you can fill in the rest, Mr.
I can fill
Velez.
the rest of them. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to go there, but I will say this. Data and the integrity of master data is really critical. One of the services we provide is we go to your legacy, and I'll just clear my throat here, your legacy system in this example. And we have a resource that comes in and extracts the data, or your IT people are going to extract the data. And then we do an analysis of your data to see how dirty it is. Where are the gaps? Where are the holes? How can we plug them? Because getting ready to go to a much more formal migration where you want to improve your processes but have bad master data, that's not a good thing. So we will tell you where those uglies are. And unfortunately, sometimes what comes out of that is like, holy moly, this is going to be a long pole in the tent to your migration. There's a lot to be cleaned up here. Some folks have grown by acquisition. I have clients that have disparate systems, and we have multiple sources to create one common master, common customer master, supplier master, item master, things like that. So I think data is really key, but profiling the data, having a data cleansing plan, and then putting in master data governance. Once you do that, when you do the master data cleansing analysis, you'll decide what you're going to do about those uglies you find, the dirty data. Who's going to oversee that? Who's going to keep it clean? Who's going to ensure that new policies are followed related to data? That's where the data governance organization comes in. And in our master data management services, we actually stand up a data governance organization, including data owners and data stewards, to make certain that whatever steps are needed to keep the data from getting the way it was when we first saw it are happening, because that's going to hurt your processes going forward.
Excellent. All right. 2 more questions. We have multiple edge products that are running off our current system. Do you handle those migrations as well?
We can and do. However, one of the things we do during our assessment is a systems context diagram, where we seek to identify to what extent those boundary systems are being used, how mission critical they are, what their life expectancy is, if you will. In other words, yep, we're doing it now, but that's not the way we want to do it. What we'd like to do is migrate and then go here or go there. So we'll collaborate with you on kind of a technology roadmap of sorts. But if those are needing to be upgraded as well, they would be included in the project plan. And that goes beyond this initial assessment that I was referring to. Now we're talking about managing the assessment after that initial period and actually PMing the assessment, which most of these questions are speaking to. But yeah, no, that is a key thing. Matter of fact, in some companies, the ability to properly manage the migration of those boundary systems is a big tuna. I mean, if that's not done right, what good is my core data if this certain service or a certain expected information flow is not happening? That's why the systems context diagram and the management of that migration is critical.
Excellent. So we've gotten a couple other questions that are a little bit more highly involved. And so what I'm going to do, Joe, with those is send those out to you and your team and have you reach out to those folks and answer those questions more directly, because there's a lot of specificity to it that might not be as relevant for everybody, but I appreciate folks sending it in. This last question, though, what does the migration roadmap process look like? Do you come to our facility? What do you need from us? Is there data exchanged?
Yeah, we would come and and it's kind of it can be 4 to 6 weeks. We try to keep it at 25K or less to make it easy. That's that first assessment. At the end of that first assessment, we would propose services to help you actually do the migration. And that comes next. But when that first assessment happens, we'll come on site and try to meet you, try to understand your processes. We're a transformation firm. We're not an IT firm strictly. We're more of a business transformation firm. So we want to go to the floor. We want to see your processes. We want to talk to the folks off the floor, to your procurement people, to what's happening on the shipping dock. Most of our consultants have a strong and heavy lean background and process improvement background. We want to see and also then quantify your migration plan in that context. So we will be coming on site probably when it's in the short sprint assessment, on site 1 week, analysis and confirmation remotely, maybe on site the 3rd week to finish up and then close out and then propose the go forward plan for the actual migration. That's kind of a typical dance that can work.
Excellent. And I would add, I believe, Mr. Velez, that even with that beautiful background in back of you, you're actually on site currently with a client. Is that correct?
Oh yes, I actually I met one of our clients. It's kind of a leading based in the Midwest, a leading metals distribution company that's also multinational. So it's kind of an interesting problem. I'm working with them here exactly.
Excellent. Well, that is all the questions we have. So here's some next steps. We are going to send all of our attendees out right after this, a gift card. Thanks again for joining us. We want to lunches on us as we mentioned. But in addition, that email is going to have some resources for you, including some contact information. So set up some time with one of our account executives to start the journey. And like Joe said, that first roadmap is really to provide some clarity, to provide that audit, to give some transparency for your leadership. A lot of the questions that we're getting is about, hey, my CEO wants this, our leadership is looking for this. Well, we want to help you to justify what a migration looks like, show you some opportunity costs, show you some of the relevant expenses you might encounter, but bring transparency to that process so that you are able to make a decision and move forward with purpose, precision, and passion. And so we'll provide in that follow-up email all of that information so that you can start talking to us and seeing if that's right for you. Big thanks to Epicor for not only helping us to put this together for the folks on the call, but also for offering that really that great incentive for you guys to migrate. And they've been great partners. Joe, I think that you've really enjoyed your encounters with the Epicor team and what they provide as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So folks, thanks so much for joining us. Again, we'll send out an email in the next 20 minutes with all the information. If you need anything in the meantime, visit our website, ultraconsultants.com, and have a fantastic weekend. We look forward to talking to everyone soon.